Good evening and welcome to this evening's RLI Power Hour webinar titled How We Started in Quality Improvement Individual Stories. My name is Dr. Jennifer Nathan and I will be co-moderating this evening's session with Dr. Bob Pyatt as we are co-chairs for the ACR's RLI Power Hour webinar series. Before we get started with this evening's session, there's just a few logistics items that we do want to let you know about so that you can better participate in this evening's event. So when you join this evening, you join through the Zoom platform. At the very bottom of your Zoom window is what we call the Zoom control panel, and you can see an image of it right here, this black box. There's two icons that we want to draw your attention to. The first is this chat icon, which I'm circling right here with my cursor. This icon you would click on if you're having technical issues. So once you click on the chat icon, up comes the chat window. You can type in your technical concern and then hit send. The information will then be sent over to our staff, who will then contact you to help you address your technical concern. The second icon I want to draw your attention to is the Q&A icon over here. When you click on this icon, you can submit questions to our faculty/speakers. So clicking on the Q&A icon, up comes the Q&A window. You type your question in and hit send. You're welcome to submit questions at any point during this webinar. However, they will only be collected and not answered until we get to the Q&A session, which will occur at the very end. One other item that we do want to let you know about is that this is a webinar that is being recorded, and that also includes the Q&A session. So we just want to make you aware of that. And next, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Pyatt to introduce this evening's faculty. Dr. Pyatt.
Great, thank you, Jen. We have assembled quite a faculty this evening, and quality improvement is a really important skill set for radiology leaders to develop, and we are fortunate to have three national leaders as our faculty this evening. Our first speaker will be Dr. Richard Sharpe. Dr. Sharpe completed his undergraduate medical and business school as well as medical internship at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. He subsequently completed a residency in diagnostic radiology at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital in Philadelphia, where he served as the chief resident. Dr. Sharpe then completed a breast imaging fellowship at Harvard Medical School and Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. For several years, Dr. Sharpe has served as a breast radiology at Kaiser Permanente in Denver, Colorado, and he also served as the national chair of the Kaiser Permanente Interregional Clinical Practice Group for Radiology and as the Department Value and Quality Leader prior to joining the Mayo Clinic in Arizona last year. Currently, he serves as an assistant professor and senior associate consultant in the Department of Radiology, Division of Breast Imaging. Dr. Sharpe has published and presented broadly on breast cancer detection, intervention, quality improvement, healthcare innovation, improving the patient experience, informatics, and care integration. In his free time, Dr. Sharpe enjoys spending time with his wife and two young children, as well as doing skiing, biking, hiking, and reading. Our second speaker tonight is Dr. Nelly Tan. Dr. Tan is an abdominal radiologist with clinical interests in genitourinary imaging and quality of care. She completed the accelerated 7-year BSMD Biomedical Sciences University of California Riverside program, coupled with the University of California, LA Medical School program. And during medical school, Dr. Tan also completed a 1-year program of cancer research training at the National Cancer Institute Urologic Oncology branch. Dr. Tan completed general surgery training and 1 year of urology residency. She was so inspired by the technological advances in radiology, and she ultimately switched to radiology as a subspecialty. Dr. Tan served as the Focused Ultrasound Surgery Foundation Fellow and completed the NIH-sponsored K30 program in the interim before completing radiology residency and abdominal radiology fellowship at UCLA. Dr. Tan's clinical and academic expertise include elucidating approaches for improving patient-centered care and quality in radiology, advancing our ability to diagnose genitourinary disease, specifically in prostate cancer imaging, using data and advanced technology to understand complex problems to improve clinical workflow and throughput, and educating future generations of physicians using novel teaching tools. Dr. Nelly Tan combines her clinical interests to drive her research and discovery. She has been awarded research grants, research awards, has published numerous peer-reviewed papers, and is acknowledged at a national level for academic achievements in her work. In addition to her clinical and research interests, Dr. Tan finds joy in having inspired medical students to pursue radiology as a career, and she continues to sponsor medical students in these pursuits. Our closing speaker tonight, Dr. John Flug, MD, MBA. Dr. Jonathan Flug attended the Tufts University School of Medicine, where he completed a combined MD, MBA program and was first exposed to patient safety and quality improvement through a summer internship at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. He subsequently completed his residency at the Winthrop University Hospital in New York and a fellowship at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York. During his residency, John Flug participated and was selected for the E. Stephen Amos Jr. MD Fellowship in Quality and Safety offered by the American College of Radiology, and he also chaired the ACR Resident and Fellow Section. While chairing the RFS, Dr. Flug served on the ACR Council Steering Committee during his fellowship and during his first year of practice. Dr. John Flug is currently an associate professor of radiology at the Mayo Clinic, Arizona, within the musculoskeletal radiology division. He serves as the enterprise chair of the Radiology Quality Oversight Committee for the entire Mayo Clinic radiology enterprise. In addition, nationally, Dr. Flug currently chairs the RSNA's Quality Improvement Committee. It's quite an honor to have three tremendous quality improvement speakers in our program tonight, and we'll lead off with Dr. Richard Sharpe. Thank you.
Hi, I am just getting the last little Zoom clicks going here. It is a real honor to be here with everyone today and to be invited to participate. So thank you to the host for inviting me. I'll start us off talking about my experience, how I got started in quality improvement. My approach was a little bit of the sort of traditional approach, and I'll share that. I'll also share experiences I had along the way. So throughout the talk in red, you will see some of my learnings and looking back over the past 10, 15, 20, 25 years, what are the types of things that have played a role in my developing a career in QI and an interest in quality improvement? And then what are the takeaways that I have looking back over those years? Put those in red. And then I'd like to identify some resources for those that are interested in quality improvement. And the best metaphor that I could come up with or image to think about developing a career is really that of a bulb sprouting roots, sprouting leaves, eventually flowering. And that's what my journey feels like. There was initially some floundering around and uncertainty, but eventually I developed a trajectory and a course and developed some skills to do the types of things that inspired me and bring me joy. So when I look back, some of the earliest experiences for me in the quality realm was when I was a freshman in college. I was involved in this ambulance service, the Georgetown EMS. And one of the things I noticed is we had about 200 items on that ambulance you see in the background. And it was hard to know if we had all of them fully stocked. So from time to time, the first or second item that we'd really want on a call after someone was needing help may not be available. And that's because of the complexity of the situation. So I worked with some of the people on my team and we developed an equipment management system. And there we suddenly had a database that would tell us what we were low on, what needed to go into the ambulance, and when we needed to order things. So this is an event where back in 1999, we were showing some of the children at the nearby daycare about the ambulance, and they were exploring it. And so that's some of my earliest experiences in QI. Next, I thought about my experience in medical school, and one of the things that really struck me was we ordered a lot of tests, and I asked how much they cost. I asked how much value they had, whether they were essential, and it was hard to get answers about that. There was a lot of uncertainty for all of those domains. So when I kept asking questions in my first year or so of medical school, I was eventually directed to a healthcare economics course at the business school. And so I took that over the summer. I thought it would be a lot of fun, and it really was. And I realized I had an interest not just in providing care, and that's why I was in medical school, but I was also interested in designing the system that's providing care around me. So I decided to enroll in the MD MBA program. And in my class at that time, MD MBA was not that common. In fact, Dr. Flug was one of the few other MD MBA folks that I knew at the time. And we graduated 4 from 200 people in our medical school. So it's not a lot, but here are some of the macro topics that was bothering me when I was in medical school early on, and that is that we were spending, and we still spend way more of our GDP, our gross domestic product, on healthcare, but yet at the same time we don't have outcomes that are any better. So in fact, here on the worst, you can see that if we draw this as sort of a median here, a lot of our outcomes are on the lower half. So that was something that I thought was unsustainable and motivated me to be interested in that healthcare delivery system rather than just providing the care. So next we'll go to what I reference as leaves emerging about QI. So I went and I asked the chair of radiology, because I thought spatial stuff was interesting as a first and second year medical student. So I asked the chair if I could start doing a research project, and I didn't know that I was, developing a quality career at the time, but it turns out that I looked at the medical literature and I evaluated the quality of the medical literature. There had been a starred criteria published for diagnostic accuracy studies, and it turns out most of the articles in the literature about diagnostic accuracy reported relatively few of the items that starred felt were essential. So that was some of my earliest experiences, and one of my key takeaways from that was that it was important to find a mentor and get involved. And find someone who's going to help you explore your interests. Next, experiences had to do with residency. And I found myself as a radiology resident signing a lot of reports. And they would go through a process where an attending radiologist would look at them and sign them. They would usually, edit something about them. And I felt like I didn't really know what was being edited. And it seemed to me to be a fairly straightforward IT problem to solve. And I happened to be at a residency that valued IT a lot. Even the attendings were savvy programmers in some of the divisions, and it valued education a lot. There was a big infrastructure, and we had 40 residents and 15 fellows or something. So that was, our competency. And what we ultimately did was we started running algorithms to see how many characters had been changed, and creating a visualization tool so that trainees could log in and they could see why changes were made, how many changes, this is the percent of the characters that got changed. They could click a button to see the track changes version of the report they created and what was ultimately signed, showing things that have been inserted or moved. And also we created a process for attending radiologists to log details about the case so that they could be put in as discrepancies that we could also review anytime we wanted. And then ultimately we took all those discrepancies and we put them into a call simulator. We anonymized them, and then other residents could learn from the experiences of the residents that had some discrepancies. So, what did I take from that? We really need to focus on problems that people care about, right? I was at a place that really cared about education, and the trainees were very excited to care about what was happening to all these reports they were signing. There's some value in learning a bit about IT. If you can talk the language and find people that know how to program and leverage your local resources, you can really solve problems that people care about. After that, I went to my first attending position, and one of the first things I did, for whatever reason, a few weeks into my career, which I'm sort of surprised I did, is I just went uninvited to a peer review meeting. I saw it on the calendar, and I went and I pretended like, hey, this is something I'm interested in, and nobody said anything to me. They didn't ask me to leave. And it turns out that I was the only breast radiologist, and there was a breast radiologist case on the agenda. So they actually valued my input. But I kept going to the meetings, again, uninvited. They didn't ask me to leave, but I kept nudging them, saying, we can do things a little bit different here. We can encourage people to submit opportunities to learn. We can have open conversations with everyone, not just the 2 or 3 people in this room, about learning opportunities in the practice. And we can take those learning opportunities and transform the care we provide to be better. And so I kept discussing this and nudging this, and they said, okay, we'll just let you go ahead and do what you're going to do, and you be the director. This is now your problem to solve. And I'm pleased to report, that the American College of Radiology has actually recently approved that same methodology that uncovers errors and opportunities to learn from clinical practice on an anecdotal basis, and endorses it as an equivalent to their previous RAD peer. So that was my early experience with peer learning. And what I learned from that experience was to choose a team that values improvement, to show up, to be brave, and to think differently. And good things can happen for you and your patients. The next project I took on was working to reduce sleepless nights. We had this issue where women were waiting a month to figure out what their screening mammogram that ultimately resulted in a biopsy and what it was going to show. And we took that down to about 5 or 6 days on average by the time we finished the project. And what I took from that was, we really need to be, as radiologists, focus on obtaining data and creating patient-centered metrics that people care about. And we need to focus on the patient because all of the teams rallied behind improving this when we developed the idea of sleepless nights for patients and quantified a metric and improved it over time. So be sure as you're working to focus on the patient as your primary stakeholder. And then in my role, nationally with Kaiser Permanente, we had challenges about different interpretation of similar findings in various regions across the country, and how to make sure that we're following them up appropriately. And we created a system that had standardized practice parameters. We all agreed to use a similar approach, and then an electronic safety net to identify those and trigger future studies that are indicated. And at that really sort of, for me, fairly high level of quality improvement, I learned that you really want to align with your organizational priorities, and you want to standardize care across your entire enterprise, not just in your local area. So think big, think at the meta level, think about value streams for patients. I think that's the direction that quality improvement is going, and you can too in your career. So a few suggestions: if you want to develop a QI career, read articles. There are tons of them. Look at radiographics. There are various quality journals. The JACR publishes a tremendous number of them. Join quality listservs. The LCIR Google group is one you can join, and we're always excited to have new people. Take courses at radiology meetings labeled in the quality domain. You can earn a certificate. The ACR has a RLI, as you know about. The RSNA has an advanced level quality certificate they're presenting, or you can do the path of a degree in public health or business or medical, a master's in science or information management. There are various options for whatever part of quality interests you most. Join a team that values your practice improvement. Join a quality project. And I put in red here, the one takeaway I think from all of our talks, hopefully, is that if you're interested, identify a quality improvement opportunity and recruit a team to improvement. You can start that tomorrow, and it's a tremendous experience. There are multiple different approaches too, and starting off, you can take the less formal, you can do the coursework and take a more formal. It doesn't matter so much the approach you take; they're all leading to improvements in care. Align your improvement efforts with your organization's goals and priorities. If you do that, resources will flow to you, people will notice, and your impact will be strengthened for patients. And your team will also better understand the impetus for change. Quantify the current state. You always want to know what you're improving before you improve it. What's the status? And then finally, in summary, it's really the synthesis of the points I made and read throughout the process. Show up, find a mentor, be brave, learn IT, question the status quo, create value, focus on problems people care about, leverage local resources, create patient-centered metrics that your team can relate to and wants to improve, align with organizational priorities, and then standardize high-quality care across the entire enterprise. So thank you again for having me. It's quite the honor to have spoken. I look forward to our question and answer session.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to present my slides. Is it working? Can I get a thumbs up? Or not?
Looks great.
Great, thank you. And I have some audience response questions. If you all can use the Zoom chat function to answer those questions, that'd be awesome, since we don't have a two-way sound exchange. And then that was great. Thanks so much, Rich. Thanks to the ACR RLL group for inviting me and my colleagues. So then we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, I have some audience response questions in here. If you can chat in your thoughts and response and how you would have responded, that would be fantastic. So I'll share with you sort of my story into quality improvement. Okay, so the scenario is that I was a junior faculty. I'm still a junior faculty. My background is in research. I've had formal training in research, and when I was a junior faculty, I reading overnight preliminary reports from the trainees, I noted there was a handful of like important misses that were, that I kind of recognized over, for the overnight prelim report. And then that got me thinking, where I was, residents prelimed all the reports overnight, and all of it was finalized or reviewed the next day. And I think many institutions, academic centers are still like that. So I wanted to know, do patient outcomes change overnight compared to daytime when you had an attending faculty on? Or that was the question that was coming to my head when I made these observations. And so I'm curious, I'm sure many of you here, I see it now, are coming from academic institutions. What would you do next? As a junior faculty, you make a certain observation and you sort of, it sort of piques your interest. What would you do in this case? Any thoughts or any suggestions, sort of how you would approach this? And feel free to chat in your responses through Zoom chat. Then I'll share with you sort of what I did next. Thanks all for putting in your names and institutions and your role. Any thoughts from anyone about what you would do if you sort of were in this circumstance or in situation? Or maybe do nothing. Dr. Barao said, ask attending to peer review resident. That's excellent. Yeah, so we do have that peer review where we tag the cases if there's misses, important misses, and sort of acuity of the misses. So yeah, exactly, right? You can ask an attending sort of, how are we doing? Do we have, do we think it impacts care? So coming from a research background, what I do is I submitted an IRB to answer this question, comparing the overnight preliminary reports to the daytime reports. And then sometime later, after I submit the IRB, I get a phone call from a leader in the department to meet with me about my IRB application. And I got a little nervous. So then what I came to learn, which will unfold, is, I approach this as a research question. And in reality, there's a tremendous difference between quality improvement versus research. Although there is a science to both, it's a different process. For example, the one method is using the A3 method. Wow. And one of the first step is leadership engagement. So if you Google quality improvement, this is what Google will give you. In healthcare, it's a framework to systematically improve the way we deliver care to patients. And we do it in a way where we measure, analyze, and improve, right? And compare it to the control or baseline. And so that was what I was embarking on. I didn't know at the time. And I learned through this sort of how to do it the right way. So before that happened, though, I had a one-to-one meeting with a leader in the department, and the leader asked me, why do you want to do this? And so I was very truthful, and I said, these are the observations that I made. reading the overnight preliminary reports, and I wanted to know if there was difference in clinical outcomes for the patients when we had preliminary reports versus final reports issued by attendings, faculty. And in response, the leader responded, "Everything's fine the way it is now. We don't need to know this." And so I was a little struck. So and then I heard from another healthcare leader, nobody wants to read overnight studies. None of the attendings wants, we already have a hard time it is, recruiting. And we don't want to dissuade people. And it'll be too expensive to hire radiologists overnight. So now what would you do, having gotten this response from leaders, from a few leaders? Any thoughts? And Rich and Jonathan, feel free to chime in. Hide in a hole. That's what I wanted to do. Ask LCIR community. Oh, that's a fantastic. So the learning community in radiology, if you all are not on the listserv, please join. It's phenomenal. We have quality improvement leaders, everyone in different sort of phases of their career on this list. And there's like phenomenal, it's a great asset, right, to kind of tap into if you have any questions. Trauma level 1 centers require an analysis between preliminary and finals. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, for me at the time, having left the meeting, I wanted to hide in a hole, like Rich said, because what's at risk? I was worried that I was going to be antagonizing important individuals, and I didn't want to do that, especially as a junior faculty. You haven't really built up a lot of capital yet, and I didn't want to lose credibility. And so I was sort of in a conundrum. What happens if there's this lack of support for a question that you think will improve how we do things, or at least ensure that what we're doing is okay. So I started this project feeling like gold, and that's where I was, after I left the meeting, it was in this hole, and I was kind of, and that was my initial exposure to QI, so the first step in QI, or first recognize that whatever project you're doing, if it's QI, then it's a very different process from research. And the first step in QI is to get stakeholder engagement, is not to submit an IRB. So being novel at this, I approached my colleague, mentor, who was at a different institution, and my mentor, who later became a mentor, said, what are you going to do the next time this happens? Right? He was questioning sort of how I would make choices when things are at risk, right? I mean, I'm a junior faculty, I don't have buy-in from leadership. This is a very important question, and sort of how do you finagle this? And so what I went ahead and did was I went ahead and found allies, other leaders who were supportive and who wanted also to know what the answer was, and who encouraged and allowed me to sort of proceed with the project. And so what I came to learn is QI is not a straightforward path. Like, there's so many different kind of things that you have to balance, and a lot of it is really like leadership lessons in leadership and communication. And so that's how I feel like QI is really. So what I came to learn from this is to just get started. Like I said, I didn't have formal training in QI, and you just learn on the fly, and you can, and there are people to help and support you. And if there's a problem, our job really, and as healthcare leaders, healthcare professionals, is to ensure that we put the priorities of the patients first. And even if there's resistance, there's always a way around it if your focus is really well-intentioned and to improve patient care. And I came to learn, right, the importance of kind of leveraging leadership skills to find allies, individuals who will support you, support the project's goals. and to learn the appropriate process for QI. Stanford QI, the ACR, RSNA have great resources to get formal training. And then if you're a novice like I was, finding an experienced mentor really helps get you through this, especially when you have to navigate kind of muddy waters. And through this, I've gained leadership skills, and it's also helped me clarify my own personal values, and put me in situations where I'm at risk for career, put certain career things at risk at the stake of asking these questions. So it's kind of solidified sort of what I value, what I know to be, important to me, even at the risk of potential losing credibility or losing face with individuals. And eventually, I think through QI you can have significant academic and clinical impact. I went ahead and subsequently I was able to secure an RSNA seed grant. I got a Mayo Innovation Award for a quality improvement project, and I've been really fortunate to publish articles in the QI area. So why do I continue in QI? I do it because, unlike research, I feel like QI work, you have immediate impact on clinical practice. And typically when you're doing QI, the hospital and leadership care about the project. They want to know the results because it's going to impact workflow. And I'm learning new processes because QI came to learn as a form of science, and there are specific sort of pathway to study QI. And concurrently, as I mentioned, it's a personal growth process, and it's helping me develop my leadership skills. And sort of, I hope you all will consider that, and I'm sure you will. Sometime in your career where you have a question that comes to you that you want to answer and pursue. So it's a great path. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And Drs. Tan and Sharpe, those were great talks. It'll be a challenge to follow you both. But just want to start by thanking the RLI for inviting me to speak here and to give this talk. A lot of this was kind of going down memory lane a little bit. And I remember when the RLI was just starting out, and really how helpful all these resources have been for me going down this journey. So really an honor to speak here today. So I'm Jonathan Flug, Associate Professor of Radiology at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona as well. And we do everything a little differently here. So my title here is the chair of our Radiology Quality Oversight Committee, as well as the enterprise chair of Radiology Quality Oversight for the Mayo Clinic. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about how I got started in my journey and something that's working for me now with using root cause analyses to kind of help get some buy-in and kickstart a lot of the projects I'm trying to work on. So as I said, I'm going to talk about how I started my journey, highlight some of the mistakes and challenges that I've encountered along the way, which will probably tie into some themes you've heard in some of our other speakers' talks, and again, describe the RCAs. So my journey really started in the summer of 2005 when I was in medical school at Tufts in Boston, and fortuitously had this opportunity to do a summer research internship at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in their patient safety department. And 2005 in Boston around that time was a real interesting time. We were kind of still relatively on the heels of the Institute of Medicine big report in 2001, Crossing the Quality Chasm, which if you read any publication talking about quality improvement in medicine, that's sort of the first line, the first sentence. And there really was a lot of positive momentum towards patient safety, particularly at Dana-Farber, which had a well-publicized patient error earlier on that inspired their group. So I had an opportunity to kind of work in this institution and not only learn about quality improvement, but really become inspired, which I think is something you'll hear me talk about a lot. And I think a lot of us who do this work in quality, it's because something lights that fire inside of us, and we become really passionate about this and just want to keep making things better and do better. So I had that opportunity, and then really didn't do much until I was a resident. And this was about 2009 to 2014. And kind of some other good timing there. In that ballpark, the ABR was requiring professional quality improvement projects for maintenance of certification. So all of a sudden you had a lot of attending radiologists who really hadn't done much quality work, who were looking for any help to do these projects to meet their MOC and their ongoing certification. So kind of overnight, you could become the resident expert in quality. And so there was a bit of a drive to do projects. And if you had the desire, you could certainly do that. And then tying into that, the ACR had these annual quality and safety meetings where you could present the work you were doing at those in your department, and get have the opportunity to present, publish, and really meet and get plugged into the quality community in radiology. And I have to say that was, for me, that was a big step in kind of reigniting that flame and passion. That's where you kind of got to hear about all the great things that were happening at other departments, meet a lot of other residents and fellows who are doing work in quality, meet a lot of the luminaries in our field who were doing quality and safety at that time. And I think it really also showed me that you could have a career in quality and safety in radiology. There was real opportunities for leadership potential there. Ultimately, I was selected to do the Stephen Amos Fellowship in Quality and Safety through the ACR, which I would highly recommend for anyone who's eligible in training and can do it. And I think that really supplemented a lot of what I was doing in our department, kind of seeing a little bit more of what the ACR quality and safety arm is, which deals a little bit more with accreditation and a lot of regulatory issues too. And I'll get back to that as well. And then ultimately was able to get plugged in with the RSNA Quality Improvement Committee, and just really, I think, continue to grow my interest and my passion. Then kind of a little bit similar to Dr. Tan's experience, I had my first faculty position, was very interested in quality and safety. And I would say when I finally had an opportunity, probably more of stumbling out of the gate rather than falling in a hole. But I did not have a formal position or formal title. But I waited until there was a chance, people knew I was interested, and until there were opportunities. Looking back, I think part of the reasons why that probably didn't work out for me as successfully is you really need a team to do this well. And I'm lucky to work with Drs. Tan and Sharpe, who all attack quality from different perspectives than me, and we're really able to kind of, I think, divide and conquer, and that's really important. Similarly, the ABR said you can now do peer review instead of your PQI projects. So it seemed to me like all that interest that everybody had kind of fell off a cliff pretty quickly. Also similar to Nelly, though, I was in a very academic-driven practice at that point, and you do realize that quality has a lot of potential for academic advancement. And I would say when I finally did have an opportunity to get involved, it was actually because of the network I had built, and particularly within the ACR. And it was when ACR accreditation issues came up and they needed a physician to act as a liaison, or when the department wanted to explore things like the ACR's RScan program, having ties and connections with the ACR and being familiar with these programs really made it easy to be the sort of go-to pretty early on for that. I stayed at that position for a couple of years and then finally transitioned to Mayo, where I think I had a little bit more experience under my belt and was able to kind of take at this a little bit different approach. And the analogy I'd use here is sort of Le'Veon Bell, who was a running back with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they said, with him, his skill was waiting patiently, seeing where the holes developed, and attacking, and that's what made him successful. And I think in this role, this is where being a little more patient and seeing for opportunities like these RCAs has really helped me. Another big benefit I had when I started here was a formal title and a team, and particularly a team with, gosh, about like 30 years of institutional experience at Mayo, which really, really helped me get off the ground and learn all the cultural issues, learn who made the decisions, how decisions were made, which is absolutely critical for success in your department. Secondly, Mayo has a very proactive institutional risk department. So that kind of made the benefit of having someone in the division who wanted to do it a real benefit. And I was lucky enough to also have the opportunity to do some leadership training and coaching through my department, which really helps you navigate the difficult conversations, the challenging groups, change management. And I think that's where a lot of these ACR resources, including the RLI, can be a huge benefit to help you succeed in this role. So talking a little bit about root cause analyses, there's a great radiographics article from Olga Brook, Johnny Kruskal, Dave Larson about this. And I think, so for anyone who's not familiar, root cause analyses is a tool that's used to evaluate sentinel events and other serious patient safety events. And what I'm talking about in this forum is really when you're required to do an RCA for a sentinel event for Joint Commission. And this article really does a great job talking about how to do this effectively. You need a moderator to really run the program and create a safe space. Avoid putting blame on people and empowering individuals to speak up, and then generating action items and following those through. So if I've been fortunate enough to be the person who's kind of the go-to to help run these in our department, help implement the change. And I think what initially may have started out as people seeing these as a headache now see me as a resource to help them carry them out and improve the issues that they need to address. This has also kind of helped grow and expand the quality team, working with others in other divisions. And it's kind of changed the attitude from, now we have to, address these quality issues to, let's be a little bit more proactive. And when we see something, we know we can do this safely. We can review this in a manner that works, that we all enjoy. Well, enjoy might be a stretch, but we feel comfortable doing. And it's really kind of been this beast that's feeding itself. So I just want to wrap up with some lessons learned and some opportunities that I want to share with the group. So a few people here have talked about the quality community, and I think it is a huge part of being successful in this realm. I think it's what really inspires you, gives you great ideas, great motivation, and whenever you kind of get that sense of maybe I should give up, the quality community, particularly through the ACR and RSNA, it's just what really keeps you going. And the mentorship is phenomenal. On the flip side, I would say, be careful. A mistake I made the first time participating in some of these meetings was seeing all these great things being done elsewhere and saying, we need to do this at home, in my home institution. But really, the way to get buy-in from your group and from your staff is working organically and taking a bottom-up approach, seeing what are the issues we're having here, and what are the things we need to address. And that's how you have a better chance of getting the buy-in from the people who may not be as interested in quality per se. The ACR resources are really great, and I'm not just saying this as a plug. I mean, I think it helps you become a better leader, helps you learn how to manage change, and gives you an opportunity to be the go-to when something comes up that others maybe aren't as familiar with. Like I said, accreditation, now peer learning, a lot of these resources, it's very, if you stay plugged in, you can become the local expert. And this was mentioned as well, but really think about this as a long-term proposition. I have to work on this daily, but you really have to think about, first of all, this movement really started in 2001 for all intents and purposes. And we have a lot of low-hanging fruit here, and any improvements you make, I think, go a long way. So I just want to say thank you all, and look forward to the questions in the chats.
Okay, well, thank you to our excellent speakers for those great talks. We're going to now move on to the Q&A session. We have had a couple questions that have already rolled in, so I'll just go ahead and start diving into them. Just as a reminder, to submit a question, you click on that Q&A icon, type your question and hit send, and then I'll see it on my end and I can then ask it for you. So our first question is for all of our faculty. Quality improvement and peer learning certainly can improve professional practices. However, medical staff, offices, and certification bodies like JCAHO seek to identify substandard practitioners or radiologists. The old quote unquote peer review was used to identify outlier performance. What suggestions do you have to persuade certifying bodies and medical staff offices to accept peer learning participation to supplant the old peer review grading systems?
I'm happy to start with that. I think it's a good question. We have a paradigm change underway, and all of the quality leaders, I think, have tremendous consensus that when we look carefully at our processes and our outcomes and our exams, and we look at them collectively with a lens toward improving patient care and enhancing our systems and being better tomorrow than we are today, and not on punishing each other, but instead on having educational conversations and growth experiences and engineering our systems to do that. You can look at the 2015 Institute of Medicine report. I know Dr. Flug has mentioned some of the earlier ones as well. In 2015, the IOM wrote Improving Diagnostic Accuracy. They put forth about 8 criteria that high functioning health systems will use to improve the care they provide. And all of the themes of peer learning are manifest in those suggestions. Score-based peer review was started 20 years ago, was well-intentioned, but has not resulted in any demonstrable improvement in clinical practice. It has eroded relationships and culture, and none of the principles that score-based peer review uses are contained within the 2015 IOM report. So as a starting point, I think that's the big picture. You're welcome to look at the ACR website for peer learning resources. In there, you'll see a link to a webinar we did last week. 2 of them, actually, it should be posting any day now, that really gives a lot of information about the peer learning accreditation process. You can educate your teams, your hospital leaders, health administrators, and rather than just convince them to do peer learning in radiology, the conversation will, we think, quickly be turning to doing peer learning across the enterprise as consistent with the mandates of the IOM. So we could spend a long time talking about these details. I'll just give the big picture and pass it over to the others.
So the question about how do you, identify, remediate, and terminate substandard physician, I think is the wrong question to ask. And this is why I'm so grateful that David Larson was kind of like really key in incorporating QI into our core exam. That was when I first learned about, and you have the normal curve, right? The Gaussian normal distribution, and in QI, you're moving the median, you're moving the middle group forward. That's QI. The question that's being posed is trying to identify the outliers, the low performers, and that's not QI, and that's not the intention or the mission of QI, is to identify low performers. It's the intention is to move the middle group, right? To shift the median. And the intention with peer review, the spirit of peer review was pure. It was to give individuals feedback. so that we can be better. It got transformed into something nasty and unproductive and punitive and ineffective. But in the origins of peer review, the mission was actually quality improvement. And that spirit remains with JACO, with ACR, with all the credentialing bodies, is quality improvement. It's not to identify underperformers. As Rich said in the past, QI is not the mechanism for that. We have other mechanisms like 360 reviews and other things, and that's not the job of QI. I feel like that's personally.
And I would just add one thing, Johnson, you mentioned, medical staff offices and certification bodies, and that's where relationships come into play. I think, when I've made a lot of inroads with our institutional risk department over the few years I've been here. We've worked together on a lot of initiatives, and I think they now have a level of trust with me and our process, and it helps us when we're trying to make changes like this. They don't think about us as some anonymous group. They know that we're kind of good to our word. It might, it's not always easy, and there may be some groups that are a little more difficult to influence that change, but long-term relationships really go a long way, I think, for these sort of endeavors.
And I can't help but mention also that the Outstanding Points team, the JACO does not require peer review or score-based peer review. And I saw that sort of reference slightly in the thing, and that's a common misperception. And the ACR webinar on accreditation will make that clear. And then, I saw another question about why are we using ACR rad peer? And you can use that. You can maintain score-based peer review if that's right for your practice. To Jonathan's point earlier, definitely do what is right for your team, but consider having those conversations, talking about just culture. Pull Dr. Larson's article from Radiology on peer learning, pull the resources off the ACR peer learning resources page, and see if your team might feel a lot more benefit from peer learning. I put an article in AJR talking about how my team was much more engaged in peer learning than they ever were in peer review. And so, I think these additional resources can really, at a critical moment as we're transitioning the paradigm, be very helpful for you and your teams.
And one other thing I'll just mention, since we're talking about this, Doctors Tan and Sharpe are national leaders in peer learning. And, despite that, we're taking our time transitioning. There are certain groups where the culture in our department, like abdominal radiology, where the culture is there. And so they've made that transition sooner, but we're doing it piecemeal because we need to make sure that each division is ready, that the folks are involved and have bought in, instead of just pushing it on folks. So I would just recommend you kind of assess your group when you're making that transition. And, if it takes time to get buy-in, it's just going to take time, and you have to be patient.
Any other comments? Okay, our next.
I'm very passionate about this topic and can talk all day.
So the next question is, great talks. Since you mentioned ACR wrap here, why are we still doing this? I don't find it to be truly helpful for peer learning.
I could just say that it's not required. We used ACR rad peer when we started peer learning back in 2014. We submitted them as an interesting case. And you can just click the button that says interesting case, and it goes into a separate database. I found that to be helpful as a way to catalog it for people to continue to be familiar with an easy PHI, approved way of submitting cases. So I found it helpful for that. But when you click on that interesting case box, the important thing is it takes away all the categories for judgments. So there's no question about discrepancy, should have been detected, severity of clinical impact. All of that goes away. And it's really just an opportunity for people to submit a unique identifier for the exam, and what is the learning opportunity they see that they think their team could benefit from having some exposure to. So that's how I use ACR rad peer. If you want to use it that way and do peer learning, by all means, just write a policy. It's all in the webinar. It's on the peer learning resources page. We have a checklist. You can have that done in a day. You can start peer learning by people emailing you cases. Tomorrow there's another webinar we did on implementing peer learning with the ACR. So it's there, I promise, and you can do it tomorrow.
Any other comments? Okay, our next question is directed to Dr. Tan. Nelly, what are tips that you have for getting stakeholder engagement when there is status quo inertia and or the initiative may be costly?
That's a fantastic question. And, you know, let me tell you, there's always someone who supports your idea if it has the right intention and you're asking the right questions and it's going to improve patient care. There's someone in the hospital, in leadership somewhere. And the other, so so you just have to find those people. And the other thing is you have to assess your risk tolerance. Earlier on, I was very risk adverse. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. You know, I was the youngest, most recent recruit into the faculty. You know, in that situation, I didn't want to do anything that, you know, kind of bothered anybody. And with QI and the thing that my mentor told me is, you know, you have to be on the bleeding edge. And when you're on the bleeding edge, there's going to be controversy and you're not going to have alignment. And another mentor told me, you only need 60% of the group people to like support you. You'll never get 100, so forget it. So number two, so in addition to finding the individuals who support you, the second thing is to assess your risk tolerance. So I became more tolerant and more, I guess, accepting that I'm going to be risking certain things at stake by pursuing projects that I think are really important to patient care. And then what you'll find is if you're consistent with and do the right things for the right reasons, with the right people, with the right intentions, at the end, you'll get the support. And even the people who didn't really agree with you and didn't support you, at the end of the path, at the end of that, they'll come around to it and they can't harm you. It's like the saying, you know, you want to be a gold coin, right? It's like you'll always shine, even if they don't agree with you, you know, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons and you're approaching it the right way. So that would be sort of my approach, is just be on the right side of history.
I could add one little observation from my experience too. And Nelly, I think that's a fantastic, you know, that really resonated with me. I'll be transparent. I actually called Dr. Flug yesterday morning and we spoke for an hour about this very question, right? This is a challenge that eludes us still at this point in our careers. But, you know, one suggestion I would have is look at the priorities, the strategic goals, your mission statement of your organization, and look at documents they publish annually about the important initiatives and areas of focus that they're having, and then design your improvements to match those. So then you're really having a conversation about what you want to do in your local environment and how it's going to further the organizational goals that have been more widely publicized. So look those up, get on the website, talk to your leaders, figure out what challenges are there, and come back down to your team with things that that have more of a mandate. Is another strategy. But I still struggle with this daily. It's tough. I like the 60% too, Nelly. That's unfortunately what we have to run with sometimes.
And I'll just add to all that. When I started at this position, I worked with a quality specialist nurse who had about 30 years of experience in the institution, and he knew, you know, who you need to speak to for certain things, who tried things that didn't work out, what might have worked in the past, and just finding those senior mentors who maybe don't want to help you in particular with this, but can at least point you in the right direction of where to go, where to find is a huge benefit. And I think you have to reach out, engage others. You can't do this alone.
It's one of the biggest challenges we all struggle with. A great question.
So we have a few questions in the chat. One is, can you give examples of systems to put in place that can identify underperformers outside of QI?
I could start us off. Conversations with various doctors, right? So you're sending reports to doctors, you're talking with them, they're coming to see you, have conversations with them. When they open up with you about concerns, you know, that's something outside of peer learning. That's something that you know, maybe you could sort of look into. You could see about patient or other radiologist reports or emails that were sent to their managers, right? The chair of radiology, I'm sure, gets emails about people and experiences from various stakeholders and things that are fantastic and things that are not. You can also just look at general behavioral trends, right? So most of the people that have challenges with quality also having challenges with being good stewards or good employees, right? So people coming to work late, not reading their assigned cases, all of that is important information that should be used in highly effective organizations to manage employees. So that's a few things. You don't want to go digging through your peer learning database. That is sequestered. It's for a different purpose. It's anecdotally submitted. It's biased, and it'll be great general educational content for your team and improvements for your practice. It's not where you look to punish doctors. And by the way, don't start off punishing them, right? So if you find something that you might be concerned, have the conversation with the doctor, have a stand-up culture, have the best positive assumptions. We all miss stuff, right? We're not robots, and missing things is part of radiology practice. So don't think you found two cases that were a little bit off, and so you have to fire someone. It's just misguided on multiple fronts.
I'd like to just add, one of the things I try to do every time we have an issue that comes my way is really focus on the system and say, what are the systems issues that led to this? I think it's really rare. It happens, but I think most of the time it's some sort of systems issue that leads to an error rather than an individual. And when it is an individual, everybody knows who it is. You know, it's usually not a surprise. So, but I always try and change the discussion to, well, what was the systems issue here that we maybe want to address or discuss? And I think that helps people put their guards down and be a little more open to thinking about change.
And if it does become an individual issue, I think, which is what the question is referring to, you know, what I've been learning in these workshops, I'm the associate program director for the residency, is records, right? You want to keep a very clear, detailed records of every incident. It's because at the end of the day, you know, even if it's sort of known you have to have a running record showing all of that. So I think that is one mechanism outside of, you know, QI that you would probably leverage to, you know, address individual level issues. And I agree. I think majority are system levels, but, you know, rarely you'll have individual level. Then in those cases, just being very diligent with record keeping and conversations and all of the things that Rich and Jonathan said.
And you're and the big picture from my perspective too, you're so much better off to take this energy and interest and enthusiasm you have and use it to improve your entire practice and all the patient's care. And people will come with you on this journey and they'll grow too, right? So another thing, you set up a peer learning program and this person's not coming, that's a record that you want to keep, right? That's something Dr. Tan's talking about. And that's an observation, you know, of the patient's sort of stewardship and generally being with the program, right? They're not submitting cases for peer learning. They don't see opportunities to grow and they're not attending your sessions consistently. That's also potentially a problem. You know, you could have participation metrics as part of your OPPE. That's a reasonable strategy to sort of have a flag get thrown if that's, you know, part of what your process needs.
Any other comments? All right, so we're just a little bit over the hour and we do want to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. So we're going to go ahead and conclude the Q&A session. I'm now going to turn things over to Dr. Pyatt.
Great. Thank you, Jen. And thank you to our tremendous faculty. What a great program tonight. Dr. Sharpe, Dr. Tan, and Dr. Flug. We really appreciate all these great ideas and comments. Thank you. If you're interested in learning more about quality improvement, the timing is great. The Quality and Safety ACR annual program, which is a virtual program, is coming up October 14 to 16. And this will be like the all-star team in quality and safety. There'll be so many superb speakers, programs, topics. This is your chance to really dig in deeper and understand more about this important leadership skill. So I would encourage you to attend this upcoming program. And I also know that for some states, licensures, you need to have quality and safety CME credits. Of course, this would be a nice way to earn that as well. But anyhow, again, thank you to our program speakers tonight. And we want to have your feedback. So we will be sending you a post-webinar survey. The recording of tonight will be available next week, and you can share that with your colleagues. Please share that widely. We get more people into the quality community and quality interest. The next Power Hour topic will be Pearls of Leadership. This will be on Wednesday, December 8th at 7 p.m. We hope you can attend, and we thank all the audience as well for attending this evening. You can register for this upcoming program or other free RLI Power Hour webinars at the www.acr.org/Power Hour website. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you to our faculty. Good night.